Warmest greetings from the stage of the Wigmore Hall. It's a remarkable privilege to be here today in this magical space to offer you a digital launch for my new novel, Immortal, about Beethoven's Immortal Beloved. This is an unusual kind of book launch, but then ours is currently an unusual kind of world. I'm Jessica Duchen, and in a minute I'll be joined by the wonderful pianist Mishka Rushdie Momen, who will play Beethoven's Sonata, Opus 10 No. 2, which will intersperse with reasonably appropriate readings from the book. So who was Beethoven's Immortal Beloved, and why, in his 250th anniversary year, are we still puzzling over her identity? And now, why turn her into fiction? On the 6th and 7th of July, in a year that appears to be 1812, Ludwig van Beethoven scrawled an impassioned love letter to a woman whose name he did not write down. The tone implies that they know each other well and have done for a long time, and it's fairly clear that they have just spent a night together. Never, he says, can another own his heart, but they cannot belong wholly to each other, or at least not yet. He decides that this relationship must be all or nothing. He resolves not to be with her anymore until they can live together. Why does he not write her name? Perhaps he's protecting her. He knows how terrified she is of scandal. Perhaps he never sent the letter at all. He kept it for the rest of his life, and it was discovered in his apartment after he died. His efforts to hide her identity were so successful that it took more than 200 years for anyone to figure it out. And in the meantime, other people threw so many red herrings into the mix that the whole became, well, a bit fishy. A theory first advocated some decades ago, but long overshadowed for complex reasons, has recently turned out to hold, after all, most of the missing cards. The Beethoven House in Bonn and the academics involved in the recent BBC series, Being Beethoven, now acknowledge that there is a 90% chance that our mystery woman is Countess Josefina Brunswick von Koromper, nicknamed Peppy. The more you look into her story, the more remarkable it seems. She became Beethoven's pupil, together with her elder sister Teresa, as early as 1799. She married Count Joseph Dame soon after that, had 4 children, and was widowed before her 25th birthday. Beethoven then courted her intensely, but she had no choice but to reject him, for fear that her children would be taken away from her by her former husband's noble family. That, however, was just the beginning. With the proviso that the evidence is only circumstantial, what we're facing here is a much larger and longer love story than has usually been thought to be the case, more passionate, more destructive, and more tragic than history has granted it. Hence, a novel. We can't totally guarantee something from circumstantial evidence, but fiction means we can suggest ways to fill in a few of the gaps. I've been reading rather obsessively about this for years now, but with the Beethoven anniversary falling this December, it seemed the ideal moment to try and bring the story to life. The book is narrated by Josefina's sister, Teresa, who is a feminist far ahead of her time and a pioneer of kindergarten education. She was, in her own right, a great friend of Beethoven's. Accosted by a young writer who wishes to tell the story of the Immortal Beloved, Teresa throws her off the scent by claiming to have been the composer's mystery woman herself. Then she sits down to write a letter to the one person who needs to know the whole truth, her niece. The lives of Beethoven, Josefina, and Teresa unfurl across more than 25 years, with many implied parallels and interreflections. And as Teresa says, in life, as in music, motifs don't have to be identical in order to rhyme. I'm honoured to have Mishka Rushdie Momen to join me today. She's one of the finest young pianists in the UK, embarking upon a major career, and she studied in the heartlands of the Viennese classics. Before and between each movement of Beethoven's Piano Sonata, Opus 10, No. 2, I'll read an extract from the early part of the book, where Beethoven meets the Brunswick sisters and their formidable mother for the first time, and their relationships begin to develop. Teresa is our narrator, and the year is 1799. The copper-domed Peterskirche squatted like a fat melon in a basket of narrow streets just off the Graben. Opposite, Beethoven lived 3 floors high, above the dust and din of carriages passing between houses and church wall. A stone staircase twisted up towards his door, from behind which came the sound of a forte piano. Mother climbed the stairs ahead of us. Peppy and I joined hands for courage. We each carried a book of his music. Mother knocked 4 times. The music stopped. I could feel Peppy's pulse in her wrist rising to meet the headlong pace of my own. The door opened, and a shabby-looking servant motioned us inside. And then Beethoven was there in front of us. I had imagined him fair, or even ruddy-haired, like the lion everybody said he was. But no, he was dark as a Spaniard, not tall, but broad, imposing, confident, hair swept back behind his collar. His eyes were eager and curious under low-set brows that threatened to meet in the middle. His neck was wide and short, his jawline squared, with cleft chin that made him more determined in aspect. High cheekbones brought refinement to this unusual visage. His grey morning jacket looked as if he had slept in it. He was younger than I had expected, not yet 30. My hands were sweating. I had no idea how I could make them play this man's music. "Good morning, Herr van Beethoven. I am Countess Anna Brunswick von Koromper," Mother said, nothing daunted. "And these are my daughters, the pianists, Teresa and Josefina." When he took my hand to kiss it, I sensed in his grasp a startling energy and warmth. Then I watched as Beethoven's gaze met Peppy's. "Dear Countesses," his Rhineland accent was quite different from the Viennese twangs to which we were becoming accustomed. "Please make yourselves at home, and please excuse the mess." The apartment was poky, furnished with a frugal minimum of necessities. Most of the main room was occupied by the forte piano. On the wooden dining table sat his breakfast plate, but the desk too was scattered with crumbs. He must have begun work while eating. Some papers sketched with freshly scribbled music bore a splatter of coffee and a smear of honey. A book of poetry by Friedrich Schiller lay open next to them. Squinting at it, I detected the title, An die Freude. In the far corner, I spotted a flicker of movement, a mouse scurrying to safety. The clatter of carriages and horses' hooves rose up through the open casement. Street air mingled with the apartment's aromas of coffee and perspiration, and in a shaft of sunlight, Beethoven surveyed us with a penetrating stare. The church bells struck midday. Mother was nothing if not punctual, and the apartment walls vibrated with every chime. "Good," he said. "Who would like to go first?" Mother and Peppy sat on the narrow sofa, while I went to the piano, shaking as if I were still in the carriage from Hungary. He must have understood my terror and at once put me at my ease. "This piece, I'm glad someone thinks it worthwhile," he joked. I took a breath, lifted my hands and began. The door sprang open, and he was with us, all apologies and smiles, and the charm that he could turn on if and when he wished to. As the sole male amid a brood of adoring countesses, he did wish to, lavishing praises upon us before we settled at a table in the quietest corner. Beethoven sat at the head, with Peppy to his left and Mother and me to his right. First, he wanted to show us some music he had just fetched from home, 3 recently published sonatas, his opus 10. I read the first pages, entranced. They were packed with striking ideas and new challenges. Tomorrow, he suggested, let's try them. Mother wanted to know about his plans for the future, his prospects, his sources of income. But why don't you want a Kapellmeister post? Beethoven began to talk. He had everything worked out, the nearest thing to a long-term plan for a business that I have heard a musician utter. The trios and sonatas were going well. Next, he must write a symphony, similar to Haydn's, but with his own stamp upon it. Then another, soon, to consolidate his achievement. Audiences loved his improvisations, so he would always include some in any concert. He longed to set to music the Schiller poem I'd spotted on his desk, the bizarre bacchanalian An die Freude, Ode to Joy. But it had resisted all his well-intentioned attempts thus far. Dinner arrived, while Peppy and I tried to emulate our cousin Giulio Guicciardi's habitual table manners, taking small forkfuls and dabbing our lips with the tip of our napkins. Beethoven dined with the gusto of a mountain lion and talked on while picking fish bones out of his teeth. We ordered a second carafe of wine. He had most of it, and not slowly. Everyone expected an opera from him, he said, but it had to be the right subject. He wasn't interested in the royal intrigues that had formed the substance of many before Mozart, or in providing show-off material for some self-obsessed prima donna. He needed a good libretto. Most were dross. "Who is your ideal heroine?" I asked him. "She is strong and true. She is virtuous, exalted of mind and spirit, and courageous beyond the level of any man. There is no length to which she will not go for the sake of her true love, and she will never betray him or refuse the challenges that love demands of her." "That is very ideal," Peppy remarked. "Where would you ever find such a woman?" "On stage in an opera, for no such person exists beyond it," I tried to joke. Beethoven and Peppy were not listening. The look passing between them made me grateful that just then Mother was speaking to the waiter. When dinner was finished, Beethoven pushed back his chair, relaxed and ruddy-faced. "Supposing we go upstairs and I improvise for you," he said. We sat open-mouthed. Everyone said that Beethoven could never be prevailed upon to play. Then again, they reckoned without the charms of a 20-year-old Hungarian countess to spur him on. We repaired to our rooms, lit the candles, and arranged 3 chairs near the piano. Beethoven tossed his hat up to the top of the cupboard beside the door. While we settled down, he sat at the keyboard, playing some figurations, testing the instrument's possibilities. A moment of silence. Then, through the deepening May twilight and the golden glow of the candles, there emerged the sounds of Beethoven's spontaneous imagination. Beethoven stayed where he was, arms lowered, head bowed. We sat motionless. We dared not interrupt this atmosphere, because it would be gone forever, together with the music. How would he ever get it back? Could he remember it all and write it down? Or should we not seek to recapture such magic? How can something so perfect be so transitory? Before we could break the spell, it was shattered by a commotion outside. Shouts of fury, a slamming door, the wheedling of the innkeeper. Through the window, we glimpsed the gentleman from the rooms next to ours, his wife and young son cowering behind him near their luggage. He was yelling at the innkeeper, "Stop the music! There is no let-up. All afternoon, every day, nothing but piano, piano, piano. And now in the evening too, when the child is trying to sleep, we are off. We are leaving. We will tell all our friends never to stay in your God-forsaken hotel again. It is inhabited by the devil himself." Beethoven burst out laughing as if he were indeed a demon. We joined in, released from our rapture, and Peppy rushed to his right side and I to his left, and nothing in the world could have stopped us from taking his hands and kissing them. If Mother was shocked, she said nothing. Perhaps, beneath her frosty exterior, she longed to join in. "Look at you, all tearful," he teased us. "Come along, dear countesses, it's a beautiful May night and the stars are out. Let's go to the Graben and I will treat you to ice cream." "Ice cream at this hour," Mother said. In the street, our master grabbed our arms, one on each side, with Mother clucking and tutting behind, and soon we were feasting on the best ice cream in Vienna. And if I remember him chasing Peppy round the towering gilded plague monument, then leaping onto its base to imitate the statues while we half screamed in hilarity, and Peppy scrambling up behind him and him taking her hand to help her and pointing out the figures whose poses to strike, and the two of them up there, looking like Zeus and Aphrodite, ready to cast blessings across a city sozzled and choking on its own wealth. Perhaps I am imagining some of it from a great distance, but perhaps I am not. Thank you so much, Mishka, for treating us to this marvellous performance of Beethoven's Sonata Opus 10, No. 2. It's been a joy and an honour to be here today at the Wigmore Hall. You've been watching the digital launch of Immortal, which is published on the 29th of October 2020 by Unbound. Thank you for joining me, Jessica Duchen, and the pianist Mishka Rushdie Momen. I hope you enjoy the book.